The business exploded beyond my wildest imagination. We landed contracts with major brands, tired of generic campaigns that fell flat with diverse audiences. Companies sought us out specifically because we could reach communities that traditional agencies couldn't connect with authentically. We understood the power of genuine storytelling in ways that felt revolutionary to corporate America. 2 years after my divorce, I was running a multi-million-dollar PR firm with 30 employees. I'd purchased a stunning brownstone in Lincoln Park, established a nonprofit providing business mentorship to underprivileged youth, and discovered a confidence I'd never possessed before. When I looked in the mirror now, I genuinely liked what I saw, not because I'd changed who I was, but because I'd finally remembered who I'd always been. That's when destiny introduced me to Jonathan Dodd. I was delivering the keynote address at a marketing conference in Miami, speaking about authentic brand storytelling in the digital age. After my presentation, during the networking reception, I was discussing emerging trends with a group of young entrepreneurs when this distinguished gentleman approached our circle. "Excuse me," he said, his voice warm and respectful. "I apologize for interrupting, but I had to tell you how profoundly your presentation resonated with me. I'm Jonathan Richardson." The name hit me like lightning. Jonathan Richardson of Richardson Global Enterprises, the billion-dollar conglomerate encompassing everything from technology companies to real estate developments to media networks. One of the wealthiest men in America was standing before me, wanting to discuss my ideas. But here's what struck me most. He wasn't trying to impress me with his wealth or status. He was genuinely fascinated by my perspective on business and social responsibility. We ended up talking for 4 hours about entrepreneurship, community impact, and the obligations that accompany success. He listened to every word like it mattered, like I mattered, not as a novelty or a curiosity, but as an equal whose insights he valued. When he asked for my business card, I assumed he might want to hire my firm. When he called the following week requesting dinner, I realized he wanted something far more personal. Jonathan was everything Marcus had never been. Where Marcus had tried to reshape me, Jonathan celebrated me exactly as I was. He loved hearing stories about my childhood, my family, my journey. He said my authenticity was refreshing in a world full of people performing elaborate personas. He admired my work ethic, my values, my commitment to using business as a force for positive change. Our relationship developed organically, built on mutual respect and genuine affection. He didn't see me as a project to be improved or a trophy to be displayed. He saw me as his equal, a partner whose opinions he sought and whose company he treasured. 6 months after we met, Jonathan proposed not with some elaborate public spectacle designed to impress others, but with a quiet, heartfelt conversation about the life we wanted to create together. The ring was breathtaking, but more importantly, his words were authentic. "Maya," he said, taking my hands as we sat in his garden overlooking Lake Michigan, "you've shown me what it means to be with someone who loves you for exactly who you are. I don't want to change a single thing about you. I just want the privilege of sharing my life with you." I said yes, without a moment's hesitation. That's when fate delivered the most delicious plot twist imaginable. The wedding invitation arrived on a Thursday, addressed to my maiden name. Marcus and Sophia were getting married, and apparently someone thought I should know about it. Whether it was meant as cruelty or simply an oversight from an outdated mailing list, I'll never know. Holding that cream-colored cardstock in my hands brought back a tidal wave of emotions I thought I'd fully processed. Jonathan found me staring at it when he arrived home that evening. "What's that?" he asked, setting down his briefcase and kissing my forehead tenderly. "My ex-husband is getting married," I said, still processing my own complex feelings. Jonathan examined the invitation, then studied my face carefully. "How do you feel about that?" "I'm not entirely sure," I admitted. "Part of me wants to throw this away and forget it exists." But another part of me wants to go. To get closure? He asked, understanding immediately. Maybe. Is that crazy? Jonathan smiled that warm, knowing smile that had made me fall in love with him. It's human. You invested 8 years in that relationship. Having complicated feelings about him moving on makes perfect sense. Would you come with me? I asked hesitantly. I know it sounds insane, but I think I need to witness this to close that chapter properly. Of course, he said without hesitation. But only if you're absolutely certain that's what you want. The morning of Marcus's wedding, I stood before my closet for an hour, paralyzed by indecision. I didn't want to appear like I was trying too hard, but I also refused to look defeated. Finally, I chose an elegant emerald dress that complemented my skin tone beautifully, paired with simple gold jewelry and my engagement ring from Jonathan. The ceremony was being held at the exclusive Lakewood Country Club, the same venue where Marcus and I had attended countless awkward social events during our marriage. Walking through those imposing doors brought back memories I'd forgotten I possessed, but instead of feeling small and intimidated like before, I felt serene. Jonathan squeezed my hand as we found seats near the back of the chapel. The venue overflowed with familiar faces from Marcus's firm, plus Sophia's extensive family and social circle. Everyone looked exactly as I'd expected, polished, proper, and oddly interchangeable in their obvious wealth. When the processional began and Marcus walked down the aisle, my heart did flutter briefly, not because I still loved him, but because I realized I genuinely didn't. This man who had once been the center of my universe now seemed like a well-dressed stranger, successful but somehow diminished. Sophia looked ethereal in her designer gown, like a princess from a fairy tale, and Marcus appeared proud and content in a way that might have devastated me once. Instead, I felt authentically happy for them. They belonged together in their perfect, superficial world. The ceremony was lovely, traditional, and entirely predictable. When the officiant asked if anyone objected to the union, I found myself smiling. A year ago, I might have fantasized about creating a dramatic scene, but now I simply wanted them to find happiness together and leave me out of their story forever. After the vows and the kiss, guests began filing toward the reception hall. That's when Marcus spotted me. I watched his expression cycle through surprise, confusion, and what looked suspiciously like panic. His eyes moved from me to Jonathan, and I witnessed the exact moment when recognition dawned. Everyone in business knew who Jonathan Richardson was. Marcus excused himself from the receiving line and approached us, Sophia trailing behind, looking bewildered. "Maya," he said, his voice tight with shock. Wow, I didn't expect to see you here." "Hello, Marcus," I replied calmly. "Congratulations." The ceremony was beautiful. His gaze kept darting to Jonathan, and I could practically see his mind racing. "This is ... He started. "Jonathan Richardson," Jonathan said smoothly, extending his hand. "Congratulations on your marriage." Marcus shook hands like he was in a trance. "Jonathan Richardson." "As in Richardson Global Enterprises." "That's correct," Jonathan confirmed with a diplomatic smile. Sophia had joined us by then, looking between all of us like she was solving a complex puzzle. "Darling, who is this?" she asked Marcus. This is Maya, my ex-wife," Marcus managed, looking like he was swallowing glass with each word. "Oh," Sophia said, her perfect smile wavering momentarily. Then, because she was genuinely sweet despite everything, she recovered gracefully. "It's lovely to meet you, Maya, and you, Mr. Richardson." "Congratulations, Sophia," I said sincerely. "You look absolutely radiant." We stood in awkward silence for several heartbeats. I could see Marcus's mind working overtime, trying to process this unexpected development. The woman he'd divorced for being inadequate was now engaged to one of the most powerful men in the country. Finally, Jonathan broke the tension. We should let you return to your guests, he said tactfully. Thank you for including us. As we turned to leave, Marcus caught my arm gently. Maya, could I speak with you privately for just a moment? I glanced at Jonathan, who nodded and stepped away to give us space. I can't believe you're here, Marcus said, his voice low and intense. With him? With Jonathan Richardson. Believe it, I replied simply. When did you? How long have you been together? About 10 months, I said. We're engaged. Marcus's face drained of color. Engaged? Is that really so surprising, Marcus? Did you think I'd just vanish after our divorce? That I'd never find love again? No. Of course not. I just ... He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I remembered from our married days when he was overwhelmed. I never expected ... What? That someone would want me exactly as I am? That someone would see value in my background, my family, my authenticity, instead of viewing those things as liabilities? The words hung between us like a challenge. Marcus looked like I'd physically struck him. I made a mistake, he said quietly. Didn't I? A wealthy man abandoned his black wife for status. But her unexpected wedding day entrance exposed truths he could never escape. Before we dive into the story, please hit the subscribe button. Also, drop a comment and let us know which city you're watching from. We love hearing where our community is tuning in from. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. You know that crushing moment when someone you love looks at you and decides you're simply not enough? When they weigh your worth against their ambitions and find you lacking. I lived that nightmare for 8 years. And today, I'm going to tell you how the universe served up the most exquisite form of justice I've ever witnessed. My name is Maya, and I used to be married to a man named Marcus. We met during our sophomore year at Northwestern. 2 broke college kids sharing instant ramen and impossible dreams. Back then, he worshipped the ground I walked on. He'd brag to anyone who'd listen about how I could whip up a gourmet meal from whatever scraps were left in our empty refrigerator. How I could debate philosophy and politics until dawn. How I possessed this magnetic warmth that made everyone feel like family. You're my queen, he'd whisper, pulling me close in our tiny dorm room. My ride or die. The woman who'll conquer the world with me. And conquer I did for him. I stood by his side through unpaid internships while I worked double shifts at the campus coffee shop to keep us afloat. Through law school, when stress turned him into a moody stranger and I became his personal therapist, cheerleader, and life coach rolled into one devoted package. Through those grinding early years, when he was pulling 80-hour weeks as a junior, associate and I managed our entire household. While building my own career in public relations, I watched him ascend that corporate ladder rung by grueling rung, and my heart swelled with pride at every milestone. We celebrated each promotion, each bonus, each moment of recognition. I thought we were architects of something beautiful, a partnership, a legacy, a love story that would echo through generations. But somewhere between his first corner office and his partnership track, Marcus began transforming. Or perhaps he simply revealed who he'd always been beneath those sweet college boy promises. The higher he climbed in his prestigious downtown firm, the more his gaze shifted when he looked at me. Not with love and appreciation anymore, but with the cold calculation of a man assessing a business asset that wasn't performing to expectations. It started with seemingly innocent observations that felt like tiny daggers to my soul. Babe, maybe you could dress a little more sophisticated for the firm parties? He'd suggest, straightening his tie in our bedroom mirror. Do you think you could work on smoothing out your accent? Some of the senior partners' wives were asking about your background. It might be better if you didn't mention growing up in Southside. People here don't really understand that world. Each comment was a paper cut small enough to dismiss individually, but collectively they bled me dry. I found myself second-guessing every word that left my lips, every outfit I chose, every story from my childhood that once made him laugh. I bought expensive clothes we couldn't afford, trying to mold myself into whatever version he wanted. I took speech classes, studied wine pairings, memorized classical composers I'd never heard of before, but nothing was ever enough. His mother, Victoria, ensured that she had perfected the art of the backhanded compliment, wrapping insults in silk scarves and pearls. "Oh, Maya, honey, you look so ... Urban chic today," she'd purr at family dinners, her smile sharp as cut glass. "It's wonderful how you've learned to navigate in circles so different from where you started. Marcus is so generous to help elevate you like this." The breaking point arrived on a rain-soaked Tuesday in October. Marcus came home late from another crucial client dinner, but this time he didn't even attempt small talk. He sat me down at our kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared thousands of meals and dreams, and delivered the blow that shattered my world into irreparable pieces. "Maya, we need to discuss our future," he said, unable to meet my eyes. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about my career trajectory, and I need to be realistic about what that means for us." My stomach plummeted, but somehow I still didn't see the tsunami coming. "The truth is, you don't fit into the world I'm entering," he continued, his voice clinical and detached, like he was terminating an underperforming employee. "My colleagues, their wives, they come from different backgrounds. They have certain expectations, certain standards. I can't keep trying to explain or justify our ... differences." "Explain me?" The words barely escaped my throat. "Justify our differences? You know what I mean. Your family, your way of speaking, your entire background. It's becoming a liability." Maya, the senior partner's wives, went to Yale and Harvard. They summer in the Hamptons and instinctively know which fork is for the salad course. I need someone who can advance my career, not hold it back. The room tilted on its axis. 8 years of marriage, and I was being discarded like outdated furniture. "So what exactly are you saying, Marcus?" "I want a divorce. I've already consulted with my attorney. Already consulted. The man I'd loved through everything had been orchestrating my elimination behind my back. Like a corporate restructuring. I sat in stunned silence while he outlined the divorce. Terms like a business transaction. I'd keep the house until it sold, receive half our savings, and get alimony for 2 years. He was being generous, he claimed. Fair. Reasonable. What he was being was cruel beyond measure. I signed those papers in a fog of grief and disbelief, my signature barely recognizable through my tears. Within 3 months, Marcus was parading around with someone new. Her name was Sophia, and she was everything I apparently wasn't: blonde, blue-eyed, old money gorgeous with a trust fund and a pedigree that traced back to Plymouth Rock. She looked like she'd stepped off the pages of Town and Country magazine, all tennis whites and understated jewelry that cost more than most people's cars. The worst part was seeing them together at social events I still attended through mutual friends. Marcus practically glowed when he introduced her, his entire demeanor screaming, "Look what I've upgraded to." And Sophia, sweet, perfect Sophia, would smile graciously and make charming conversation about her charity work and her art history degree from Vassar. I felt invisible, erased, like our 8 years together had been nothing more than a practice round for his real life. The months following our divorce were the darkest period of my existence. I moved into a cramped apartment across town and spent most evenings sobbing into takeout containers, replaying every conversation, every argument, every moment of our marriage, desperately trying to identify where I'd failed him. My friends offered well-meaning but hollow comfort. "You're better off without him. He never deserved you. His loss." But if that were true, why did I feel like such a complete failure? Why did I feel like I'd been weighed, measured, and found utterly wanting? After 6 months of wallowing, my sister Keisha finally staged an intervention. She appeared at my apartment one Saturday afternoon, took one look at me in my pajamas at 3 o'clock, and literally dragged me out of bed. "This ends today," she declared, yanking open my curtains and flooding the room with sunlight that hurt my swollen eyes. "You are not going to let that man steal your future along with your marriage. What if he was right?" I sobbed. "What if I really don't belong in that world? What if I'm just not sophisticated enough, not elegant enough, not—" "Stop." Kaisha gripped my shoulders and forced me to meet her fierce gaze. "The only thing you're not enough of is angry. You should be furious. Maya, that man threw away 8 years with an incredible woman because he was too weak to stand up to a bunch of snobs. And instead of being mad at him, you're destroying yourself. That changes right now." Something in her voice cut through the fog of self-pity that had consumed me. She was absolutely right. I wasn't the problem. I never had been. Marcus was the problem. His family was the problem. A system that measured human worth by bank accounts and zip codes was the problem. But I wasn't the problem. That realization ignited a fire in me that had been dormant for far too long. I was finished shrinking myself to fit other people's narrow definitions of worthy. I was done apologizing for my roots. I was done believing I needed to transform everything about myself to deserve love and respect. Instead, I decided to transform everything about my situation. I enrolled in an MBA program at Northwestern, not to become someone else, but to sharpen the business skills I'd always possessed. I'd been exceptional at public relations, gifted at connecting with people, brilliant at spotting opportunities others missed. Why not leverage those talents to build something extraordinary that belonged entirely to me? I started small, freelancing for local businesses that needed PR help but couldn't afford the big agencies. I specialized in authentic, community-focused campaigns that resonated with real people instead of just impressing other marketing executives. Word spread like wildfire through Chicago's business community. Within a year, I had more clients than I could handle alone, so I hired help. First 1 employee, then 2, then 5. We operated out of my apartment initially, then moved to a small office in Wicker Park, then a larger space downtown. I named the company Authentic Voice, and our motto was Real Stories. Real connections. Real results. I studied this man who had once been my everything, who had shattered my heart and demolished my self-worth, who had made me believe I was unworthy of love unless I transformed everything about myself. And I felt nothing, no anger, no vindication, no satisfaction. Just peaceful closure. "You made the right choice for you, Marcus," I said gently. And it led me to make the right choice for me. "We're both exactly where we belong." His shoulders sagged. "Are you happy?" "Incredibly," I answered, meaning every syllable. "Good," he said, and surprisingly, he seemed to mean it too. "You deserve happiness, Maya. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand that." I touched his arm briefly, a gesture of forgiveness and farewell. "Take care of yourself, Marcus. And take care of Sophia. She seems wonderful." When I rejoined Jonathan, he took my hand and squeezed it tenderly. "Ready to go?" he asked. "More than ready," I said as we walked out of the country club together. I felt lighter than I had in years. The ghost of my past was finally laid to rest. The woman who had once felt small and inadequate in these halls was gone forever, replaced by someone who knew her worth and would never settle for less. That night, Jonathan and I had dinner at our favorite restaurant, the same intimate bistro where we'd had our first date. It wasn't impressive by country club standards, but the food was extraordinary and the atmosphere was warm and genuine. "Thank you," I said as we shared creme brulee, "for coming with me today, for supporting me through that." "Thank you for letting me be part of it," he replied. "I'm proud of how you handled yourself." I'm proud of how you handled yourself. I'm proud of how you handled yourself. You were gracious and dignified. even though you had every right to be bitter. I was bitter for a long time, I admit it, but holding on to that anger was only poisoning me. Today felt like the final step in releasing it completely. Jonathan reached across the table and took my hand. I love you, Maya. Not despite your past, not in spite of where you came from, but including all of those experiences. Your journey is part of what makes you extraordinary. Sitting there in that unpretentious restaurant with the man who loved me unconditionally, I realized something profound. Marcus had been right about one thing: I didn't fit into his world. But that wasn't a character flaw. That was a blessing. I was never meant to shrink myself to fit someone else's narrow definition of acceptable. I was meant to build my own world, one where authenticity trumped artifice, where substance mattered more than status, where love was based on who you are rather than who you could pretend to be. 6 months later, Jonathan and I had our own wedding. It was nothing like Marcus and Sophia's formal affair. We married in my grandmother's church in Bronzeville, surrounded by family and friends who had loved and supported us through everything. My sister Kaisha was my maid of honor, crying through the entire ceremony. Jonathan's best man was his college roommate, a public school teacher who had known him before wealth and power entered the equation. The reception featured catering by a local soul food restaurant that had been my family's favorite for generations. The music was a blend of jazz, R&B, and gospel. The decorations were simple but beautiful flowers and string lights, rather than expensive centerpieces. Everything about our celebration reflected who we were as individuals and as a couple. During our first dance, Jonathan whispered in my ear, "This is perfect. You're perfect. We're perfect together. We're perfectly imperfect." I corrected him with a laugh, and he laughed too. That rich, warm sound I'd fallen in love with. Looking back now, I can see that Marcus did me the greatest favor of my life when he divorced me. He forced me to confront my own worth, to stop seeking validation from people who would never truly see me, and to build a life that was authentically mine. I learned that you can't love someone into appreciating you. You can't change enough to make someone value you if they've already decided you're inadequate. And most importantly, the right person will never ask you to be anyone other than who you already are. My marriage to Jonathan isn't perfect because we don't face challenges. We're both strong-willed individuals with demanding careers and complicated lives. We disagree sometimes. We get stressed. We have to work at our relationship like any couple. But it's perfect because we navigate those challenges as true partners, with mutual respect and genuine care for each other's well-being. He's never suggested I change my accent, my mannerisms, or my background. He's never made me feel like I need to apologize for my family or my past. When we attend business events together, he introduces me with unmistakable pride, not as my wife, the PR executive, but as Maya, the woman I love. And when people ask how we met, he tells the story with enthusiasm, emphasizing my business expertise and my keynote speech, making it clear he was attracted to my mind and character, not my appearance or social connections. The last I heard, Marcus and Sophia were thriving. They had a baby boy last year, and from what mutual acquaintances tell me, they seem genuinely content together. I'm happy for them. They found their perfect match in each other, just as I found mine in Jonathan. Sometimes I wonder what might have happened if Marcus had chosen differently, if he had defended our relationship instead of viewing me as a liability. But those thoughts never linger because I cannot imagine my life without Jonathan. The truth is, Marcus and I were never truly compatible. We loved each other, but love alone isn't enough. We wanted different things, valued different qualities, had different definitions of success and happiness. It just took us 8 years and a devastating divorce to figure that out. My business continues flourishing, and I've expanded into consulting for Fortune 500 companies on authentic diversity marketing. I speak at conferences worldwide, sharing my story and helping other entrepreneurs build businesses that reflect their values. The nonprofit I established has helped hundreds of young people from underserved communities launch their own companies. I wake up every morning grateful for the life I've constructed and the man I share it with, not because everything is flawless, but because everything is genuine and authentic. That's the lesson I want to leave you with. Your worth isn't determined by other people's opinions. Your value doesn't depend on fitting into someone else's vision of who you should be. The right people will love you for exactly who you are, and the wrong people will always find something to criticize, no matter how much you transform yourself to please them. Don't waste precious time trying to be enough for people who have already decided you're not. Instead, focus on becoming the fullest, most authentic version of yourself. Build a life that reflects your values. Pursue relationships with people who celebrate your uniqueness. Trust that the universe has a way of connecting you with exactly who and what you need. Sometimes what feels like the worst thing that could happen is actually the catalyst for the best thing that could happen. My divorce felt like the end of my world, but it was actually the beginning of my real life. And sometimes, the sweetest revenge truly is living authentically well.